Good morning, good afternoon, good day, good evening. My name is Sibylle Erle. I'm chair of the Blake Society and editor of VALA. VALA 5. God. I still remember in January when John, Jason, and I sat together thinking about the new theme of the issue, and suddenly John Reardon said, "Why don't we do it about God?" I remember the exact moment. And I'm inviting my co-editors, art director John Reardon and managing editor Jason Whitaker, as I go to join me on the screen. As I go through the housekeeping, so this is just to say, as people are still joining us, that the evening will consist of 4 parts. There's going to be conversation between John, Jason, and I about the making of VALA 5, followed by 2 presentations by 2 contributors to VALA and 1 Q&A. We decided that they share their Q&A, which can also then be a discussion. So I'm just seeing that the sound isn't great. Okay, I'll try and speak more clearly. So the discussion can be an opportunity for other contributors to this issue, VALA 5, God, to add to what's been said or what is being discussed, as well as more general questions from members of the audience. And after part 3, the Q&A, we'll have a short comfort break where you can get a beverage, because part 4 is announcement and toasts and celebration, as well as enjoy VALA, which is then going to move across your screen. And part 4 is when I hand over to Stephen Pritchard, the secretary of the Blake Society, who will lead on the announcement and toasts. So it's time. Oh, I should say before we start, we didn't rehearse this. We just set ourselves 3 questions, and then we decided to have a conversation about these questions. I have no idea what Jason or John are going to say. So one thing we said, we all agreed, so this was a WhatsApp conversation, that we wanted to think about how VALA has changed. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat again. How VALA has changed from our initial expectations. And the way I interpreted this question was this VALA taking on the topic of God, as well as this is number 5 that we've done. So Jason, John, please start. I nominate Jason.
So the first thing I wanted to say was thank you very much to you and John for getting it over the line. Before anything else, it's a labor of love, but it is also, I think, a bit of a labor. This one has been. It's a huge contribution, and actually, so in a sense, the challenge and then the thing that particularly responded to the challenge has been the fact that over the past 5 issues, I mean, VALA started during the lockdown as a fairly slender magazine, which actually had some important ambitions at the beginning. When we were first discussing launching VALA, one of the discussions that we had was in terms of the form that it take. I mean, those who've been members of the Blake Society for a long time will remember that there was an original journal, a little like A4 booklets that would appear every year with a number of academic and also creative writing pieces. In fact, the very, very first thing I ever had published on Blake appeared in one of the issues of that original journal. But the opportunity to do VALA in 2020, 2019, whenever it must have been 2020 because it's pandemic.
Lockdown.
Yeah, lockdown. The opportunity to do that was for me an opportunity to do something different to a traditional journal. I worked for many years as a magazine editor, and I always wanted something of the glosses about Blake. I wanted to produce something that was closer to kind of tape magazine or wallpaper, or, you know, the whole house, or ID, which was a big one for me growing up. And I think for me, VALA has always represented an opportunity to bring together the visual appeal of William Blake and this is another thing that's really important, and so many brilliant illustrators. I mean, we have brilliant writers, we have fantastic articles, but actually, I think one of the things that I love about VALA, because it's quite rare in magazines these days, is actually to get original artists and illustrators contributing to the magazine as well. So the challenge was actually just getting it finished. It just seemed to balloon over the year, which I guess is fitting for such a huge topic. But by the same token, by being willing to take on such a big topic, I think that is also a remarkable achievement of VALA as a publication. It actually, I remember for the second issue when it really hit me, the issue on women and gender, I thought this is actually a really significant scholarly contribution to the topic. That actually, there's people like Helen Bruder and many others who have written on Blake and gender, but actually we then, in this second issue of the journal, we had this quite important contribution to a whole range of thoughts and activities and ideas that was going on. So that's always a pleasure as well.
The trouble with letting Jason go first is he always just says what I wanted to say. So yeah, firstly, I would like to apologize for the subject of this issue of VALA. When you say something as a joke and then everyone else takes it seriously and go, oh yeah, that's good. And then you go, oh yeah, so I meant it. Yeah. So I think it is a good topic, but yeah, not unambitious, shall we say. I want to second what Jason was saying about so I'm kind of from the world of illustration and comics, and as I never tire of saying about Blake, one of the things that really interests me about Blake is that he's kind of the patron saint for me of freelance creatives who are, in his case, literally scratching away, engraving all day, and then when he should have been sleeping, making these incredible things that he was driven to make of his own imagination and volition. I've just 5 minutes ago, I've written down, I think this is everyone who has given us amazing original artwork for this issue. By my reckoning, it's 16 people. If you'll indulge me for a minute, I could just read their names. And I apologize if I've missed anyone out. I don't think I have, but here we go. So we've got paintings or illustrations or ceramics. This is all original artwork from Christopher Bucklow, the late Antonio Pachetti, Kate Westbrook, Rob Davis, David Battersby, me, Richard Hemmings, Carl Gopalkrishnan, Tamsin Rosewell, Lucy Valentine, Diane Eagles, James Mabley, George Harding, Paul Thompson, Jane Montague, and Noel Kruger. I don't think I've missed anyone. I hope not. And for me, it's so important that we've got, so this is what, 140 pages, this VALA, and obviously it's packed full of amazing Blake artwork. But for me, it's I think for all of us, but this is one of the things I love about it. It's really important that it's also packed full of all this amazing other stuff. So you get this kind of dialogue between all of this amazing Blake art and all this new stuff. And it's an absolute joy seeing these original artworks come into our inboxes. And then, for example, there's an amazing interpretation, a painted interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar. And to be completely honest, I commissioned it way too late in the day because blah, blah, blah. And I asked Rob Davis, who I know from the world of comics originally, and I was like, got like a week to go. I know this is impossible, but I don't suppose you fancy it. And he was like, I really shouldn't, but this is right up my alley. And he's, days later sent in this amazing artwork, and the thrill of being able to share that initially with Jason and Sibylla and then with everyone is great. What else did I want to say about how it's changed? I sort of also took that as over the 5 issues of VALA so far. And when I became a trustee of the Blake Society, the very beginning of 2020, And little did we know what was about to befall us all. My memory is that Sibylla mentioned that I think Sibylla and Jason were already working on what became VALA. And I said, oh, I used to work for a magazine back in the day. I could probably help with that, you know. And I remember sort of thinking, before I'd seen anything, thinking, oh, right, so they're like these two amazing academics working on it. Should probably like get a graphic designer involved though, because I thought, you know what it's like if you just let like academics do it. It'll be full of great stuff, but it'll look like shit, you know. And little did I know that Jason had this, you know, background in magazine design and publishing. And you know, Jason talks about us getting it across the line, but design wise, you know, 90% of how amazing VALA looks is down to Jason putting in months and months and months of design graft. So that's been an absolute joy as well. And just to see it grow into almost too big a thing, really. A monster, a beautiful monster. I'll shut up now.
But on the note of growing, I remember in January, the first thing to do is send out a call for paper, phrase it, send it out to the different channels that we have, and then there's a deadline, and then we have to read everything, choose with the trustees, discuss it, and that's already very hard, just to build it around the theme that we have. And then the work starts, and it's without the images initially, for me at least. And then there come different points when there emerges the need to invite somebody else, or something occurs. So there, from my point of view as well, very late in the day, there appeared a hole in the list of things that I thought should go into VALA. So it is, I think it is a living process that changes, and I'm partly responsible. I mean, I always think it's going to be online. So yes, why not have another person? We really need this person. And then we also need to think about the finances and the pages and the work that Jason has to do, and John as well, in terms of finding someone short notice. So the lateness is partly something that VALA sort of pushes back on us all, I dare say, that there's a demand that suddenly articulates itself. And I just found it very challenging to fit all that in, but there was no other way than to address those holes, as I call them. Right. The second point we said a challenge. So I think I've already said this, to fit it all in. That's the challenge, apart from VALA becoming more beautiful, more monstrous in all kinds of ways. So the challenge for me was to fit it all in. What about you? I nominate John this time.
Yeah, I feel like I should go first now, and now I don't know what to say. This is the disadvantage of going before Jason. I don't know, like in the nicest possible way, the whole thing's an enormous challenge. And I don't even think I've done the most work on it this time round. But like, I really mean it. It is on one level an absolute joy to make, and is genuinely one of the sort of creative things that I'm proudest of that I've been involved in so far. It is also like an absolute horror because we're all, you know, all three of us, and this goes for all the Blake Society trustees and everything else they work on as well. We're all kind of doing this because we're mad about this Blake guy. And we want to engage with him and subjects that are connected to his work, and we want to get this stuff out there, and it's great. But it is all, you know, we've all got jobs and lives, and just kind of fitting it in is the challenge. Yeah, fitting it in and doing justice to it, because that's the other thing. There's a kind of responsibility, right, when you've put a call out for writers and articles, and then illustrators, and we've got comics in here, and paintings, and Diane Eagle's amazing ceramics, lots of other things that I can't bring straight to mind, but then you've got a duty to do justice to that stuff, and to you know, whether that's academically in terms of how you present this person's work and their arguments and references and all the rest of it, or whether it's to do with presenting the artworks in the most sort of clear, beautiful, best designed way. So yeah, we want to do it well. Yeah, that'll do for me, I think.
And so John took all my words.
Good, good.
No, and to follow on, the challenge has been, so anybody who's been following anything about British academia at the moment will know that it's a challenging time at the moment. So the job has been a challenge anyway, and then doing VALA at weekends or in evenings. Um, and I'm slightly loath to say this because if I don't say it, nobody will notice, I don't think. But actually, the challenge this year with such a big issue was that I didn't feel I had enough space and time because of work to be quite as experimental with some of the layouts as I have been in previous issues. Because actually there was issue 2. There was one where I used Blake's Rose as a kind of a almost like a lithograph. No, what's the way you do the printing with like cyanotype? I tried to do it with the cyanotype effect, which took a huge amount of work in Photoshop, and there's multiple layers. You know, the work that goes on behind the scene to do a design like that is actually quite intense. And I didn't do, and there was one in the last issue with the lamb, where again I took Blake's illustration of the lamb and I wanted to do it as a reverse kind of negative effect over a dark blue background. And stuff like that, you know, cutting it all out really carefully, sort of realizing just how intricate Blake's illustrations are. And there's not as much of that in this issue. Rather, there's big, bold splashes of color, which is the easy get out of jail free. If you're a designer, big backgrounds with lots of color and bold text on top, etc. And of course, double page spreads of Blake's art and also the various illustrators that we've used. So the challenge, and that's this issue of going from a bigger, an ever bigger issue, but also, you know, just that we have life to do outside of VALA as well. Unfortunately, in some cases, as it happens, yeah. So that was the challenge for me.
Could I just interject though? Because I would say this. It struck me when I was so what happens is like the last sort of week or so of or the way it's happened in the last few is the last sort of week or so of VALA, Jason kind of hands over his sort of Herculean design object to Sibylla Rai, and we go like through and just do the last sort of amendments and text amendments and everything, and just sort of final little things, which means I get to like really look at it for like the last few days before we put it up on the website and put it out to everyone. And it's that weird thing when you're doing it or involved in the process, you don't see the incremental changes that actually, despite everything that Jason's just said, and I get all of that, I think they look even better each time. I really do. And I think if you look back at, you know, like I was saying earlier about like, oh God, should we get a graphic designer? Then it was fine. The first one looked great. And then the second one, I was like, oh my God. And I think now, I think they look even better now. Like every time I'm more pleased.
If I could just jump one thing to say, thank you very much for saying that, John. But I mean that thing, you know, some academics involved, and it's going to look like ants. Well, most people who know me through the Blake Society obviously know me through my work on William Blake, but actually my day job is teaching students how to do journalism and magazine design and website. That's actually what my living is, actually more as a designer and a kind of a hack, you know, churning out words with students, etc., than it is as an academic in the traditional sense. You know, that's actually what I spend most of my time teaching.
Yeah. And the third point we said we'd think about and share was one thing that made you laugh. And I'll start talking about the words and thinking and work behind the scenes, as well as the ongoings of last week. So I found myself laughing at myself when I was typing to John, can we please have long dashes in this paragraph? Because I've got this thing about long dashes, but I'm very serious about this. And I was talking to Carl Gopal Krishnan about this the other day, and so it's a Blakean thing for me. I've realized once I started thinking about that with Carl, that I wanted to break holes into the text and let it breathe, so that when you look at it, it allows you, the viewer, to enter that space. And I'd never thought about this, but I'd always felt very passionate about those long dashes. I don't know why I did that, and I've got the words to explain it, But when I found myself taping this very early in the morning, I thought, what's John going to think now that I say again, please, why can't we have long dashes here? Okay, who goes next?
Mine's simple. The one that made me laugh most was the illustration of Nebuchadnezzar. That is superb. And if you haven't looked at the magazine yet, that is one of the highlights. And again, just testament to that dialogue between word and image. It was a surprise. It's looking at an image which I've known for over 30 years and seeing it anew again.
The one that made me laugh and still makes me laugh is so we've got a 3-page comic from David Battersby, which is his 4-page, which is his part of his interpretation, or comic book interpretation of the Book of Urizen. But then there's a sort of extra treat on the 5th page, which I think is on page 41 of VALA. We have his comic strip take on young William Blake seeing God at the window, which I don't want to give away the joke, but it's really good. And then we sort of deliberately put that cheek by jowl with my 3-page comic, which is about the same incident, but with a very different interpretation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. This has to be part 1. So I wave goodbye to you for now and invite invite our speakers. So we've chosen, again, this is very, very difficult, Dr. Mark Vernon and Dr. Suzanne Sklar. I'm just waiting for Suzanne to appear as well, just very briefly, because I'm going to introduce you both now. Mark is going to go first. Mark is a writer and psychotherapist, podcaster, and former Anglican priest. I'm just reading the short bios at the back of VALA. And then Suzanne is a retired academic, and she writes and leads Blake seminars, workshops, and study days in the UK and USA. And so I'm waving goodbye to Suzanne just for now, because Mark is going to start, and I will disappear as well. While you're listening, there's going to be a PowerPoint. Please feel free to put questions into the chat as they appear, but there will be time after Suzanne has spoken. So we're going straight from Mark to Suzanne to ask these questions in person. We will keep an eye on the chat as well. So I'm handing over to Mark. Thank you also to Suzanne for agreeing to do this, to present on your paper, and over to you.
Well, look, thank you to Belay, but also to Jason and John. It really is very exciting to contribute to such a tremendous publication, and it truly radiates love of Blake and actually his liveliness now too. In my contribution, I really want to press Blake's idea of God, because I think it can seem strange to the modern mind, to the point of being fundamentally misunderstood, in fact. So one way into this is to think of some of the quotes that Blake makes that reference God, and how, particularly when they're taken in isolation, it can seem as if he held what would nowadays be called a non-realist view of God. So this is as if God were a kind of useful heuristic conjured from a lively imagination, or an ideal towards which a creative human person might be drawn. So just one example, in The Everlasting Gospel, one of his unpublished poems, Blake writes, "Thou art a man, God is no more, thy own humanity learn to adore." It seems sort of like a slam dunk. I think, though, that what has happened is that Blake's form of Christianity has become strange, though in fact across the course of Christian history it isn't strange, but in certain quarters is actually the mainstream. Moreover, I think Blake reckoned we need a revived focus on what would now be called mysticism, and gave clear reasons why, which is what I try to lay out in my essay. So at heart, you might say that something basic has happened to the Western imagination in the centuries, particularly since the Reformation. And this can be summarized as the transcendent becoming uncoupled from the immanent. to put it in more Blakean terms, we now struggle or have even stopped being able to see a world in a grain of sand or heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of a hand and eternity in an hour. This has come about partly because religion has transformed, ceased to be a transformation of inner life, hence mysticism, and that has become marginal since the Reformation. Partly because figures like Martin Luther and John Calvin were hugely wary of the human psyche, believing it's mostly a source of fantasies and dangers. At the same time, churches became closely entangled with the new nation states that emerged, and Christianity became more of a moral creed than a path of life. Then in the UK particularly, the closure of religious houses and monasteries in the 1530s all but destroyed the living wisdom of spiritual traditions that facilitate what Jesus called the discovery of the kingdom of God that is within. Instead, the secular kingdom that is without became the main focus of attention, and you belonged or didn't according to the creed that you did or didn't verbally confess. Similarly, the word religion began to change meaning, which leads to all sorts of confusions now when trying to understand the past. Right up until the 18th century, i.e. Blake's life, it mostly referred to the virtues and piety that links people to God, and not, in fact, to doctrinal systems. And that meaning of religion didn't really become settled until the invention of sociology in the Victorian period. So, for example, when Blake writes, "All religions are one," I think we need to hear the older sense of the word. As Blake puts it, this sense of religion is the poetic genius, which he describes as the true man and descended from the Lord. In other words, religion is a practice that fosters the meeting of the finite and the infinite. Hence, all religions are one, because that is what a religious way of life is about. Now, what he is indisputably against in his work is the deism that was dominant in his times. And that too plays a key part of our distance from the older senses of religion and God and mysticism and so on. This is because deists undid this meeting of the finite and the infinite, and instead regarded God as a far off and not a friend, to quote Blake. That has benefits, in fact. It clears the imaginative space for the development of naturalistic descriptions of the world, and with that comes remarkable technology, the modern world, in fact. But also, the seeming need for God appears to dwindle. In other words, deism is the precursor of atheism, which fully emerged after Blake's death in the later 19th century. But I think Blake saw this separation coming, and hence railing against deism, calling deists enemies of the human race because they separate the transcendent from the immanent, and that is the title of my essay. He also objected to exclusively naturalistic explanations for things. In his poem Milton, he writes, "Every natural effect has a spiritual cause and not a natural, for a natural cause only seems. It is a delusion of Ulro, of a ratio of the perishing vegetable memory." The perishing vegetable memory being a vivid description of an imagination that has closed in on itself because of becoming uncoupled from eternity. This conviction was articulated from the earliest days of his work, and he could hardly have been more explicit in the title of almost the first thing he printed, "There is no natural religion." And perhaps, Ian, I could have my first slide at this point. In that pamphlet, he also outlines why natural religion just won't work. It's a closed system and imagines that the human psyche has the power to be endlessly inventive. Now, I realized that this thesis about the endlessly inventive, closed human psyche, that it just doesn't hold, because I used to work in a psychiatric hospital. And there you encounter people whose imaginations have been cut off from the wider world. Blake's phrase, "the same dull round," in this pamphlet is a good description, in fact, of the repetitive spirals that people suffering in this way become trapped by. And I suspect he would think that much of modern life has become similarly psychotic. The reliance on the empirical and philosophical, as if the material and the narrowly rational were all we need, turns the universe into nothing more than a mill with complicated wheels, another expression from "There's no natural religion." And it denies the true nature of the prophetic and poetic, those aspects of the human psyche that are open and receptive to the infinite, which they receive in their finite creations. Now, Blake, to my mind, also unequivocally stresses that the traditional theological source of this creativity is God. And in the final plate of There Is No Natural Religion, he engraves, therefore God becomes as we are, that we may be as he is. And Ian, perhaps the second slide that has that. Thank you. This phrase is very significant. It was common amongst the first Christian theologians, also called the Church Fathers, as an expression of the core meaning of Christmas and the Incarnation. In Eastern Orthodox churches, the dynamic is known as theosis, realizing the unity with God. Theosis is found in Western mystical Christianity, but is not generally stressed or even evident in the churches, which are heavenly inclined to preaching a sinful abyss that divides God and humanity. So it's almost the opposite of theosis, in fact. But theosis, therefore God becomes man, that we may be as he is preserved in the mystical traditions, including mainstream figures whom Blake read, such as Teresa of Avila. And he would also come across it, I think, via the Moravians, who were linked to the Eastern Orthodox Church, in fact, not the Western churches. And also, as research conducted by Cézanne Sklar, Shortly to Speak, shows, he would have known of the Orthodox Church directly during his life. And theosis is the theological idea that pervades his work. He thought our divine humanity needs that transcendent horizon to flourish, not just as a heuristic, but as a source and wellspring into which to grow. We are denuded as creatures without it, and moreover, turn to denuding the rest of the natural world around us as a result, because we never get satisfied with accumulating. We see the all in a word, God. Ian, perhaps you could take down the slides now. So Blakean mysticism is all about this telos. He understood that the transcendent is closer to us than we are to ourselves. Our humanity therefore becomes the pathway to the divine, hence writing, thy own humanity learn to adore, which he writes, in fact, as the words of God. Because in the everlasting gospel, God is speaking them to Jesus at this point, before Jesus incarnates to communicate that God becomes as we are, that we may be as he is. God says, if thou humbled thyself, thou humblest me, thou also dwellst in eternity. Thou art a man, God, i.e. the distant deistic God, is no more. Thy own humanity learn to adore. In other words, when a person is perceived correctly, or for that matter, when a grain of sand, cloud, meteor, or star are, then the divine face is seen in that fullness. Another way of putting it is that Blake did not see Christianity as a historical religion in the sense that the most important events happened in the past, again, a common modern trope, but rather as one way of understanding the depths of the present. So he puts it in this wonderful summary in Milton. There is a moment in each day that Satan cannot find, nor can his watch fiends find it. But the industrious find this moment, and it multiply. And when it once is found, it renovates every moment of the day, if right. Again, that stress on the immediate moment as a place that opens onto the all, onto eternity, is utterly for mystical imagination. Is that God is not afar off, that is a brother and friend. Words. In my history reside in the human breast, a place where eternity, quote, glows like the sun. Or again, as he has Jesus the Saviour say, I am in you and you in me, mutual in love divine. Now, of course, I realise that this realist view of God is controversial nowadays, and the mystical can be taken as simply mystifying, which I guess is partly why Northrop Frye famously said that Blake shouldn't be called a mystic, but a visionary, which of course he is too. But the point is that I think Blake would have us engage in the mental fight to recover that fuller vision. He believed that our humanity depends upon it. And to draw to a close, this is why I'm delighted to contribute to this discussion in the, once again, wonderful looking new VALA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. Let's go straight to Suzanne, and then we have a discussion.
Suzanne, do you want to unmute yourself and camera on? Suzanne, it's Ian here. I'm wondering if you haven't accepted the recording of the Zoom session, which means we can't hear or see you. So you may have a dialogue open that says, I need to consent to audio and video recording.
All right, now it's back. It froze. It was just frozen. Is it okay now?
Great, we can hear and see you now. So if you
It was
reset
just
to your stop,
frozen. It's like
fantastic.
screen
We've got
crash.
you. We've got you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Mark, I have to say this is absolutely wonderful because I think my talk segues from yours. So we have the background of knowing about theosis, which is actually a responsibility. And the nature of my talk has changed slightly because of current events. And I want very much to stress Blake's inclusive theology and the possibility that forgiveness can be a social structuring principle. As many of you know, the divine body is one of Blake's central metaphors. We are each connected to all. The inner being, God within us, connects us to every living creature, including trees, rocks, stones, and little lambs. And this is made evident right after he writes, "There is no natural religion." We have the Songs of Innocence, and there we learn what it means to be in the divine image. Mercy, pity, peace, and love is God our Father dear. Mercy, pity, peace, and love is man, his child, and care. Every man of every clime that prays in his distress, prays to the human form divine, love, mercy, pity, peace. All must love the human form, in heathen, Turk, or Jew. Where mercy, love, and pity dwell, there God is dwelling too. We are enjoined to do something with the divinity within us. As Desmond Tutu said, we are God's hands, we are God's feet. And this responsibility and interconnectedness also includes nature. And this is evident from Songs of Innocence way back in 1789. The speaker asks a little lamb, "Who made thee?" And there is an answer, "I'll tell thee. He is called by thy name, he calls himself a lamb. He is meek and he is mild, he became a little child. I a child and thou a lamb, we are called by his name. Little lamb, God bless thee." The speaker and the little lamb and God are in what Martin Buber would call an I-thou relationship. Martin Buber wrote this book, I and Thou, over 100 years ago. And in it, he discusses how humans relate to others, to societies, how countries relate. An I-it relationship sees the other as an object. It's dehumanizing. When you refer to 38,000 dead children and 60,000 orphaned children as collateral damage, that's the I-it relationship. The I relationship is where you think everyone should value what you do. Nationalism and fascism promote this I mentality. Narcissism is one of the most developed forms of an I relationship. The I-thou relationship sees the other as an independent presence worthy of attention and respect. Differences aren't threatening, they're intriguing. Differences may seem to be contrary to each other. But as Mr. Blake tells us in Marriage of Heaven and Hell, without contraries is no progression. And it was referring to the marriage of heaven and hell that sparked this essay, many months ago, when so many people who were promoting the Palestinian nation, who were seeking for support for Palestinian people, were being called anti-Semitic. And I thought that was very strange because the Palestinians are Semites. All the children of Abraham are Semites. Abraham came from Sumeria. He was a Semite. Here we find out that the new heaven is beginning. Now is the dominion of Edom, you see in about a third of the way down, and the return of Adam into paradise. See Isaiah 34 and 35. If you look for what's the dominion of Edom might be, you find that Edom is the territory of Esau. Esau is a grandson of Abraham. Abraham had a son named Isaac who had twin boys, Esau and Jacob. Jacob tricked his brother Esau out of his birthright. And when this happened, Esau was brokenhearted and he was begging his father for a blessing. His father tells him, "It will come to pass, you shall have your day of dominion. The yoke will be broken from you." And in the story of Jacob and Esau, Jacob has to leave town because of what he did. And when he returns with 2 wives, 2 concubines, more than 13 children, flocks and herds, Esau appears on the horizon with 400 warriors, and Jacob is very frightened. But when Esau sees his brother, he runs to him, he weeps, he kisses him, he welcomes him. Jacob is still scared and offers him tribute, but Esau says, "No, we can share the land. I have enough." Is the dominion of Edom and the return into paradise dependent upon the ability of leaders to say, "I have enough"? Throughout the Bible, the Edomites are considered to be enemies of the Israelites. If you look at Isaiah 34 and 35, you see a strange transformation. In 34, there's devastation, judgment upon Edom, pitch, soil into brimstone. The land is the abode of ostriches. The kites will be gathered, feasting on the dead. But in 35, with no particular reason, the wilderness and dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. The eyes of the blind are opened. The burning sand becomes a pool. The haunt of jackals is an oasis. There's some kind of transformation that includes Edom. The land and the people can participate in transformation. Now, the Edomites and the Israelites don't have the same values. There are conflicts, but Isaiah 34 and 35 would indicate that it is possible for enemies and lands to flourish if you understand that without contraries is no progression. My essay refers to the peace of Jerusalem. And of course, everyone here knows Britain's unofficial national anthem, Jerusalem. You get a bow of burning gold, a chariot of fire, a spear. "I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land." Now, believe it or not, there are a few churches where vicars don't want this hymn sung because they think it's too nationalistic. Jerusalem, as you know, was written just as Milton was being completed. It's a kind of a hinge between Blake's poem called Milton and Jerusalem, the emanation of the giant Albion, started in 1804. In Jerusalem, we learn that Jerusalem is all over the world. She covers the Atlantic mountains, the Erythraeum, which is the Red Sea, from bright Japan and China to Hesperia, Spain, France, and England. Mount Zion lifts his head in every nation under heaven, the Mount of Olives, all over the earth. Subsequently, we hear that Jerusalem is in the Congo, she is in Ethiopia, she is in Great Tartary. She is everywhere. Her blessing is for all people. And problems in the world of that poem and on this planet can stem from thinking that you can monopolize divine blessing. As Blake says, that the Jews are assumed to write exclusively to the benefit of God will be a lasting witness against them, and the same will it be against Christians. Humanity and divinity and the planet are all imbued with divine energy and blessing. And Blake's hero, Los, in Jerusalem, the emanation of the giant Albion, sees this. He sees the New Jerusalem descending as he sings. She's winged with 6 wings. When she opens the second set of wings, we see all the tribes of Israel, the river of life, the tree of life. When she opens the third set of wings, we still see Israel in her tents, as well as Moab and Ammon and Amalek. There are bells of silver around her knees, articulating sounds of love and harmony. Are the children of Israel dancing with the ancestors of the Palestinians? There can be peace. There can be peace when forgiveness is a social structuring principle. Jerusalem is a woman, a city, and a way of life. She asks one of the most pertinent questions in the poem, a question that policymakers would do well to ask. Why should punishment weave the veil with iron wings of war, when forgiveness might it weave with wings of cherubim? Forgiveness can be a social structuring principle. It's not easy, though, because individuals and nations are gripped with an illness called selfhood. Selfhood insulates you and separates you. Selfhood breeds fear, greed, lust, all those deadly sins. Selfhood spurs this lust to conquer. My mountains are my own, and I will keep them to myself, Albion proclaims in Jerusalem. Humanity shall be no more, but war and princedom and victory. He is crippled by selfhood, and he ruins the world through selfhood, but selfhood can be annihilated. And that's not easy. It requires wars of intellect, wars of mutual benevolence, wars of love. There you see Jesus with his arrow of desire. The angels are falling. That kind of arrow can lay open your hidden heart. And if humanity isn't open to annihilating selfhood, we are going to be in really big trouble, because where there's selfhood, we can't be in an intersubjective I-thou relationship with others, with other nations, and with the earth. When selfhood is annihilated, we are motivated by empathy. I would like to end, because it's Blake's birthday, with an exhortation from Visions of the Daughters of Albion. Owathawan speaks and says, "The seafowl takes the wintry blast for a covering to her limbs, and the wild snake the pestilence to adorn him with gems and gold. And trees and birds and beasts and men, behold the eternal joy. Arise, you little glancing wings, and sing your infant joy. Arise and drink your bliss, for everything that lives is holy." Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Mark. We haven't got much time for many questions, and while just because of the many more things we need to do, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question? I've been looking at the chat, and I think the combination gave us a good impression of how deeply dense and diverse this VALA is. And of course, it's very difficult to just in 10 minutes, which hasn't been fair from us to you, to say what you said. And Mark's essay starts on page 73 of VALA 5, and Suzanne's on page 109. There's been many compliments in the chat. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question? Because I'm minded to suggest. John.
What's been said so far is very interesting, but it has concentrated too much, I think, on the verbal domain. We've had too many words and not enough pictures. My understanding of Blake is that more is to be gained by studying his pictures rather than reading his words.
Thank you. Suzanne, do you want to respond? Thank you.
I was utterly blessed to study with Gene Hagstrom. He was my first Blake professor. And it was Gene Hagstrom who made it clear that Blake's is a composite art, that the pictures and the words, the contraries, work together. If I had more than 10 minutes, I would be delighted to talk about the great conversation between the visual and the verbal. I think that is Blake's genius.
I would like to contribute to that conversation.
What?
I would like to contribute to that conversation.
Yes. A nice tea party would be good.
Oh, we can't hear you, Mark. You're still muted. Mark, you need to unmute yourself.
I just add in that I had the great privilege of studying under Suzanne Sklar. And Suzanne, as you noticed this evening, doesn't just do the poetry and the painting, but also does the music. Because as Blake often said, he introduced himself as a painter, poet, and musician as the inspiration moves. And I think that that too is another part of what enables us to feel this in our souls, the combination, as well as leap into these transcendent elements and bring them into the finite. And because the contraries, as it were, open up a third space, open up that moment. So I can only agree, it's really important.
Yeah.
But how is that to be done? I have some ideas on this, not for now.
Yeah, we can put
I'd love to talk with you.
Yeah, we can put you in touch beyond outside this meeting. Thank you very much. John, is there anybody else? Because I'm minded to invite other people who contributed to VALA number 5 to show themselves, that we can see who else is in the room. I've recognized some names. There's Camilla, there's John, Annalisa. Just to give you an idea of how many there are. Thank you for coming. Wonderful. Stephen, I'm aware of time, and I wonder if now is a good time to hold all these questions that we have. They can still happen in the chat. And if this is the time to hand over to you.
I think we're having our comfort break, are we not, at this point?
Yes, of course. It was. So while we enjoy VALA, who's going to move across our screens, the invitation is now for everybody to get a beverage of their choice. We have a short break, it's less than 5 minutes. and then we return, and then Stephen is going to, the secretary of the Blake Society, Stephen Pritchard, is going to lead us into the next and last round of tonight's celebration. So we're approaching VALA now. Everybody can enjoy the art as well as look at the words. This is the break. Come back in 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Oops, I better turn off my
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you had a good comfort break and that you've charged your glasses with something delicious so that you'll be able to do the toasts when the toasts occur. Just before we do the toasts, I think Sibylla's already introduced me. I'm Stephen Pritchard, Secretary of the Blake Society, for my sins. I just have a few announcements to make. My first is that VALA, as I like to call it, VALA, is absolutely brilliant. I've only just seen the pages go past. I've only seen 1 or 2 pages prior to tonight. It is more beautiful than ever. I also have an announcement, as promised, about our presidents, because we are honoured and delighted to have a joint presidency until 2027. And our new presidents are Juliet and Mark Rylance, who many of you will know are outstanding performers of stage and screen, also involved in production, artistic direction, and all manner of things. And they love Blake, have loved Blake for a very long time. And Mark Rylance gave Juliet a copy of Blake's Songs of Innocence and of Experience when she was 8. And so she fell in love with Blake, and they both absolutely love the Blake. And I think they're going to bring an enormous amount to the society. They hope to be here tonight. I have a message from Juliet. It's quite brief, so I will read it because they're in transit. They're actually flying. And Juliet writes, "So we will not make it onto the Zoom, sadly, but we'll be tuned in and with you all, and Blake and Catherine in spirit. Hoping it all goes very well indeed. Happy birthday, Blake. All my very best, Juliet." And so, yeah, we're really looking forward to having them on board, and I think they'll bring, as I've said, an enormous amount to things. Just a couple of things to draw to your attention. There are 2 discounts available on the Blake Society newsletters for members. There's Noba Daddy coming up this weekend, amazing dance piece at Sadler's Wells by Michael Keegan Dolan as an emanation of my conversation really with him. And also the Rossetti manuscript facsimile, that's Blake's notebook with Rossetti's transcription and emendation. So there are discount codes for both those things. It's a beautiful facsimile of the Rossetti manuscript, which I very much recommend that you think about both those things. I shall be at Sadler's Wells on Saturday for Nobo Daddy, which is a Blake-inspired, of course, with that name, a Blake-inspired dance piece, which I think will blow your minds. We are now going to have a little bit of music, and after that, toasts, and I'm going to invite a number of wonderful Blake groups. We all love Blake, and they'll tell you a little bit about what their groups do, who they are, and maybe give us a poem or a toast to Blake. And we've only got about 4 minutes for each of those, so I hope we can stick to that. But right now we have an extraordinary musician who's making an album about songs of innocence and of experience. She's going to work towards doing the lot for 2027. And I did an event with Katie at St Bartholomew's recently, and 150 of you turned up, which was brilliant. And yeah, so Katie is going to play for us now, and she's going to do for the introduction from Songs of Innocence. So we're going to get piping, and I'll disappear.
Hello everybody, lovely to see you. I'm not quite sure if I can see everybody because the video's not switching on, but I hope you can hear me. Okay, start my video. I'm going to do Songs of Innocence, Piping Down the Valleys Wild. It's a beautiful introduction. Just come back from an incredible event at the Tate Britain today with the William Blake congregation. So we're all in high spirits to celebrate William Blake's 267th birthday. Piping down the valleys wild, piping songs of pleasant glee. On a cloud I saw a child, he laughing wet said to me, pipe a song about a lamb. So I piped with merry cheer, pipe a pipe that song again. So I piped, he wept to hear. Drop thy pipe, thy happy pipe, sing thy songs of happy cheer. So I sung the same again, while he wept with joy to hear. Pipe a sit thee down and write, in a book that all may read. So he vanished from my sight, and I plucked a hollow reed. And I made a rural pen, and I stained the water clear, and I wrote my happy songs, every child made joy to hear. I will sit thee down and write, in a book that all may read. So he vanished from my sight, and I plucked a hollow reed. And the next song I'm going to sing is the lovely Tiger. No, it's actually London, sorry. And I'm coming to Tiger. Do you want me to do that now, Stephen?
No, we're just going to have
No.
a toast now, because we're going to intersperse
Okay.
you amongst the toast, which would be wonderful, Katie. Thank you so much for that. That's brilliant. If people would like to share their favourite Blake poem or a toast to Blake in the chat, please do that. That would be absolutely brilliant. And I would now like to invite all the groups who are present: Emma Johnson, Helen Steve of the Blake congregation, Doug Nichols, Catherine Kelly, Rachel Searle, to put their cameras on, and then Ian will be able to spotlight you when I call you up one by one. So first up, can we hear from Emma Johnson from Artists for Blake? That would be so nice, Emma.
Hi,
Tell us a
hello.
little bit about the group. We've only got a few minutes.
Sure, I know it's only short, so
It's
yeah.
fine, but
So
so nice to see you.
it's nice to see you, Stephen. So Blake for Artists was started by Andrew McLean, who's in the participants here. She started it and I joined shortly afterwards because I'm a big Blake fan. We've been going for a few years now. We're a smallish, vibrant group. We have a core membership each week that come, but we have people come and go, and we're very open to people coming to learn about Blake at our meetings. Though it's called Blake for Artists. This covers a wide variety of artists, and if people want to come and just, even if they're not an artist, they just want to learn about Blake, then they are welcome. Everybody is welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Emma. That's really lovely. And next up, we have Helen and Steve of the Blake congregation. They were on a coach, but hopefully they're visible. And yes, they introduced Katie to Blake. So we're very grateful for that introduction. I'm not sure they're here. Helen was in the room earlier, but they are traveling back. So maybe we'll go to Doug Nichols of the Blake Cottage Trust and tell us about that, please, Doug.
Hi, everyone. Exuberance is beauty, and what a beautiful VALA edition that's going to be. I'm really looking forward to reading through, and thanks everyone for keeping that going and making it so wonderful. In July, we had to cover the cottage with a tin roof and some screening to protect it from the elements. Otherwise, the roof would have collapsed. We've done a lot since then, but this week has been particularly busy and particularly exuberant. We got a thatcher in to start removing some thatch so that skilled engineers could come in to see what we needed to do to repair the roof. They've done that. We then got the book collection that we've got ready for display sometime when we open the cottage, down to some librarians here who are going to catalogue it. We've then met with the university today, Chichester University, to see how we can work with a range of their departments when the cottage is restored. And you'll have seen this week that out of the blue, Billy Bragg decided to auction one of his guitars to get some money in for the cottage. We've located the woodworker who can reconstruct Blake's printing machine, because we want to get that up and running in the cottage when it's done. And many other things this week have happened, but I thought my little personal tribute and toast to Blake would be a poem I did about the oak tree just at the back of the cottage, and it's just called Blake's Oak. So here we go. On this very bough I sit now. William and Catherine, nude perhaps, made vows for all eternity and every living thing that they would spend their lives in giving everlasting gospels to the world. From Feltham, near my home, they were unfurled in prints and poems, emboldened by the might of voices in our history that fight through every generation for greater power, to feel the sap and growing strength in our intent to save all species and explore the solar system and abolish war. Was to feel the tree's determination rooted in a freedom-loving nation. Above, the sea breeze plays the million leaves. We hear each contribution as it achieves the dignity and the delight of being. Whispering together new ways of seeing. Hear the sound of the dissenters calling. See the crown and the dark deceivers falling. How each leaf shimmers, sunbeamed, free at last. The Lollards liberated from the past. The levelers and diggers dancing on this green. All nonconformists vindicated. Unseen conventicles now shaping this great tree. Each one an angel of our history, where we can see just chains of events gone by. They see one single catastrophe piling high, disaster after disaster at their feet. They'd like to stay and make the past complete, awaken the dead who had been smashed. But a gale from paradise is blowing and making them wail as it crashes their wings so they can't close, and sweeps them to the future to which their backs keep turned as the debris before them grows higher and higher. This is progress, civilization, and pyre.
Thank you so much, Doug. That's fantastic. Doug is a poet, full-on poet, and I very much recommend you take a look at his books of poetry because they're very, very brilliant. I have an apology to make to Emma and Blake for artists because I got it the wrong way around. It's just stage fright, Emma. I do apologize.
It's okay.
Apparently, we have, yes, we do. We have a representative of the Blake congregation. And if we can get her up on screen, we'll just go back to that and then we'll go forward with the other contributors. So where is she? Yeah, it's fantastic, Jill Rock. Thank you, Jill.
Hello everyone. First, Helen and Steve would like to give apologies for not being here on this very special occasion with the Blake Society, but they asked me if they couldn't make it, if I'd just say a few words. Helen and Steve are founders of the Blake congregation, which has been going for 35 years. And we proclaim Blake on specific dates which are special to him, his birthday, his death day, wedding, christening. And we speak Blake, whether it's through contemporary work or Blake's own words. And everyone is welcome. The Blake congregation is totally, totally inclusive. So anyway, I'd like to wish dear William, happy birthday. Many happy returns. Returning 267 years on. We say thank you for all that you've given us, for the beauty of your poetry, prints and paintings, for the wisdom and determination to seek a better life, for the understanding that life is in essence spiritual, and that on earth we will not cease from mental fight, nor shall our swords sleep in our hands, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. So with much love from the Blake congregation and all the admirers and lovers of you, William, and your work through generations worldwide, happy birthday, dear William. And thank you to the Blake congregation for giving me many years of happy occasions. It's been a great pleasure, Helen and Steve, for all that you've done. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you ever so much, Jill. And thank you for the poem. I know if Stephen had been here, he would have given us one of his poems, of which he has many. But
Yes.
it's just so lovely to have all the groups here. So we will carry on with the groups. But first, Katie will give us a taste of London.
This is London, and I'd just like to say a really wonderful thank you very much for having me here, and just love the people in this group. And you've got to have one of Emma Johnson's incredible poems. I wandered through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlots curse, blast the newborn infants dear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. London,
Thank you, Katie. It's a shame we don't have sort of applause buttons to press. I know we do with sort of the emoji, but it's not the same, is it? That's so lovely. Thank you so much. Now I'd love to hear from Catherine Kelly, and another of the groups that we hold very close to our hearts, which is the Blake Fellowship. Catherine, speak to us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, good. So happy birthday, William Blake and fellow Blakeans. We thought about sharing a poem for Blake's birthday, but the poem we felt we liked to offer is William Blake expressed through the voices of our fellows and the people that we meet through our different events, including the project for the last surviving home of William Blake at 17 South Moulton Street, to become a cultural centre, and we have news on that later. And also we have the duties to keep Blake's resting place clean and maintained as a place of pilgrimage, though that's what we do. So one time cleaning the grave, we were barely noticing an Indian businessman on the bench, busy on his mobile. But slowly his attention kept getting disturbed, watching us, what we're doing. And he asked, "Is this a family member?" Well, we all went, you know, as you do. And one of our fellows went over to speak to him while we continued to clean. And then after some time, he left. And we said to the fellow, our friend, Yogi, Blakean friend, what's the story there? And she said, well, it turns out this Indian businessman, he's got a very bad relationship with his own family back in India, and especially his father. And so she told him all about Blake and why we're doing what we're doing. And, you know, he was so touched by that. He said they felt that the love that we'd shown by cleaning the grave of this great poet, that it really moved him. And he went away to actually call his father. So this we find, without us doing anything, it's the healing power of William Blake. And another story, a lady, she's very thin and strained, very troubled. And she came up to us as we had the flowers and the water were working away. And she said, "Excuse me, I hope you don't mind. Can I ask you something?" I said, "No." And she said, "Well, can I put a flower on Blake's heart?" We'd never been asked that before. So we gave her a flower. She bent down, put a flower on the side where Blake's heart, slightly to the left. And then she bowed her head and then she left. We don't know, we never found out what that was about, but that's the soothing power of William Blake. And when we were invited to the National Gardens at Bunhill this year, obviously all the gardeners were going to come. And they asked us to stay there and talk about Blake, his life and work, and how he ended up in Bunhill. But the thing is, the group stayed all day. We were non-stop talking about Blake, constantly surrounded by people. And it was so lovely that the coordinator of the National Gardens, she said to us in feedback, they came for the gardens, but they stayed for William Blake. That's nothing on us. That's, of course, William Blake. They were so enthralled by that. And of course, musician Matt Johnson said by sitting there, he's always found an inspiring place to sit and meditate. And in fact, one fellow that we met, very nondescript, average person, he said to me one day there, "I can't understand why my friends go away on holiday to other countries. This country has it all. It has Blake." He says, "I can't understand these friends." He says, "When I'm in Cumbria or when I'm here, I look around and see and feel Blake is everywhere. He's within." And then we stood together in silence, just looking down at the resting place. It was a beautiful moment, really still, just two people together in that moment. And it made me think, this must be this moment the Satan cannot find that was referenced earlier. And I thought, the way this man was talking, he's like a saint. Who is he? What did he do for a living? And he said, "Me?" He said, "Oh, I'm a builder." And so we know that is possible in all of us. And when we had a Blake birthday walk on Sunday just past, we asked the walkers, why did they come? What was it about Blake? What would you like to say to Blake on his birthday? And here's just some messages here. "Thank you, Mr. Blake, for enlightening England." Another said, "I'm learning about you and your work." Another said, "Your vision is unfolding in the hearts and minds of more and more people every day." And another said, "Dear William Blake, we will follow your light to the end." And so before we do the toast, why don't we just take a few moments ourselves just to be quiet, just be peaceful, let's just sit nicely, and just see if we can together, collectively in this moment, Blakeans all, just touch that moment of stillness and silence within. If you like, you can just close your eyes just for a moment. Let's take a breath. And with every exhalation, just relax the facial muscles, the abdomen muscles. the tensions. And as Susanna said, let go of selfhood, the ego, and just allow ourselves to empty out to that divine humanity and say, I forgive everyone for everything. I forgive everyone for everything. In that moment within, very simple and centered, we can just make a toast to William Blake. And as we raise our glasses, let's say, please awaken your spirit within me, so that the manacles forged by the mind just drop and fade away, and allow the sweet silence to expand within us and take us into that infinite peace and joy that will renovate every moment of the day. So thank you, our dear William Blake, and thank you for taking your birth. Maybe we can promise him, affirm, we will follow your light to the end. Thank you, William Blake.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm drinking my toast. Catherine sent me pictures of Blake's grave cleaned beautifully, and the Blake Fellowship really do maintain it in a brilliant state. And once I knelt down and got the toothbrush to work on the grave as well, it makes a huge difference. Without that, it would just disappear, basically. Fantastic. I'd now like to call upon Rachel Searle of Blakefest, which I really want to get down to Felpham or Felpham, depending. It's two ways of saying it apparently, and see what Blakefest is all about. But Rachel, you can tell us. Unmute. Need to unmute, Rachel.
Thank you, Blake Society, for a wonderfully inclusive event. Sorry for talking to you from a kind of a chaotic environment, but that's kind of process of moving and things. Anyway, yeah, I think Blakefest really comes from a kind of catching something when Blake was in Felpham. He saw it as more spiritual than London, and you said heaven opens here on all sides, golden gates. Her windows are not obstructed by vapors. So I kind of thought, you know, if Blake found that in Sussex, in Felpham, if he found something that kind of was easier for the poetic spirit, if you like, to breathe and live, then maybe that can kind of continue. So the kind of motivation of Blakefest really is that fanning of the poetic spirit and grabbing that golden string that William Blake talked about. And I think we don't have too much time. I really liked Blake's poem about the golden string because it's just so accessible. It's, you know, and anybody can like grab a string and wind it up into a ball. You don't have to be particularly academic or poetic or artistic. You can just kind of catch something. And I think that's the nature of being human. And I kind of hope that through the different events that we do at Blakefest and the different things that we've done over the years, that people can kind of grab little bits of that golden string and wind it into a ball. And we've done a eclectic mix of things over the year. And I'd like to think that we've been led by the poetic spirit and things that we've done. So there's a Blake trail that we've done. There's events that we held. We took over a shop for a while, a clothes shop, and Stephen Micallef came down and maybe stuck a poem in the window. Just I don't know. It's kind of whatever we think of really, but we really wanted something in Sussex. So I'm absolutely delighted to see Doug and his team taking over Blake's Cottage, and want to sort of really support that kind of, you know, being the place it should be, and the bright light, and, you know, Brexit land, lots of shadows where I am. So we just kind of light fires where we can, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I want to give a toast to William Blake. Thank you for kind of being with us, abiding in us, showing that God is within us, and for being a great model with Catherine, your helpmate. What a wonderful picture of marriage and helping each other to kind of go forward. So Blake, yeah, love you, thank you. I'm not going to drink alone, so to quote from Blake to start with, I give you the end of a golden string, only wind it into a ball, it will lead you in at heaven's gate, built in Jerusalem's wall. Sorry, so I'm not drinking alone. Cheers to William Blake, cheers to Catherine, and may you all keep the poetic spirit alive wherever you are.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic, Rachel. And it's yeah, definitely have to get down to see it. I want to give a shout out to our beloved patrons, two of our beloved patrons who are with us tonight, Mike and Kate Westbrook, who've just posted something beautiful in the chat. And they're extraordinary musicians who made such beautiful interpretations of Blake's lyrics, which is, you know, just been a joy to us all for some years now. And we're just so happy to have them with us today and always. And I'm just going to give a last toast now, and then we're going to play out with Katie. So my toast goes like this, given the state of things and the theme of VALA. And throughout all eternity, I forgive you, and you forgive me. As our dear Redeemer said, this is the wine, and this is the bread. Katie, bring us Christ the Tiger, please.
This has just been the most fantastic day. I can't really sit still, Catherine, you know, from the fellowship because I'm too bubbling. I've had such an amazing day with the William Blake congregation in the Tate Britain, and now I'm with all our friends here at the Blake Society. And I'd also like to put a big shout out to Sue Young, who brought me this amazing piece of art. I don't know if you can see it, but it's from her recently deceased husband, and this is his wonderful piece of artwork where he has done incredible calligraphy to Tiger. So I just wanted to mention that. His name was Alan Young, and I'm remembering him, and had such a gift this week. Actually got it on Monday, so it is a birthday present in a way from William. I feel very blessed. So yes, this is Tiger. What an incredible poem. Thank you so much for having me. Total honour. And yes, if anyone wants me to send a picture of this beautiful artwork or anything else, just let me know. This is Tiger. Tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What dread hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his world to be? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. What immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry?
Thank you so much, Katie, and thank you to all the Blake groups joining us tonight. It's an absolutely joy to have you all together and all with us. Thank you to Sibylla and John and Jason and all those who have contributed to VALA. I have to call it VALA, I'm sorry. And also, of course, to Mark and Suzanne and their brilliant talks. It's altogether been a fantastic event. And Katie, thank you so much for bringing your music to it. And so we say farewell and happy birthday, William Blake.